up the volume. Get bearded. Let's start the show.
Welcome to Bearded Biomed. Hey folks, welcome back to an all-new episode of your favorite Biomed podcast. Appreciate you tuning in today. As always, I love to engage in conversations with my colleagues, the ones that are doing the daily grind, that know where I come from, and obviously tell their stories as well. I just so happen to have a fellow Biomed here with me today. You might know him, recognize him, but if not, you will know by the end of this episode. I'm joined by Kevin Rivera. Appreciate you joining me, sir.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm looking to get on the show.
It's been coming for a little while, so glad we could finally match up our schedules and talk about it. But for the folks that may not be familiar with you, which I see you on quite often on LinkedIn, which is where we've had a lot of discussions and comments, stuff like that. But if you wouldn't mind sharing your background, where you come from, and kind of your journey into biomed.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of been like a BMed for about 15 years here going on. I really started, we were having conversations before we started recording. I really got my foundation, honestly, probably from my grandfather. We were working on PCs and stuff when I was little. He's in the computers. He's actually in the engineering field. So I think that might have sparked my interest, in electronics. I went to vocational school in high school, so that we actually had a really good electronics school. So I spent 2 years there. Kind of building up a lot of those fundamental electronic skills. And then, I was fortunate enough that our, area in Cleveland, we actually have a really strong community college. And that college has a biomed program. So I started that program, I think about 2008. So it's a 2-year program. I still actually
What's the college?
Called Cuyahoga Community College. So it's a tech school in Cleveland. It's very affordable. It's great. I actually sit on the advisory board. I'm actually the chairman for that still. So we kind of, we meet quarterly and we kind of make sure that the program's aligned to what we're doing in the industry. So that's kind of one way I give back to the community. So I went there for the 2 years, and then I was lucky enough to get a internship. You get to do an internship at the end of the 2 years. And I was, intern at this small local hospital, regional hospital, about 300 bed hospital. And that's kind of where I start really building my skills. Thankfully, I know some biomeds, sometimes you'll get pigeonholed when you first start. A lot of times, new guy, pump guy, right? Which nothing wrong with pumps, but thankfully I was actually working in the OR within 6 months. So I think, to be honest, that really boosted my career path. So I spent 5 years there doing ventilators, OR, anesthesia. I went for a promotion and went to a bigger hospital in Cleveland. I spent 8 years there, and I actually went all the way up from like what we call a Tech 3. We called it a specialist, basically a Tech 3, up to team lead. And then actually I was a manager there. I had about 15 reports. So I kind of, gone from the tech, to the managerial level. Now I'm actually in a different role, and I'm actually focusing on cybersecurity, which I know is a big buzzword. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I'm leading a program, and my team has some cybersecurity experts, and I'm kind of bringing that more managerial and project management, flavor to the organization.
That is a very common career path, at least from folks that I've talked about, that, you cut your teeth in a small, relatively sized, hospital, kind of get your wits about you, learn the ins and outs of biomed.
Yeah.
And then usually everybody either within that same system, or they, obviously like you did, go to a different facility, and that's where they start getting assigned departments. To where, you're responsible for in a certain, whether it be OR, whether it's maybe you're the imaging person or trainee or what have you, you start just kind of kind of rounding out who you are, where your career path is going to go, or at least really start. I'm sure there's plethora of suggestions or at least advice you could give on, what that career path could have went. You could have probably went a lot of different ways with it. Obviously,
For
you
sure.
decided to go management. When I'm talking to folks about management, I usually say, some of the best leaders maybe don't want it at first. They are willing to kind of soak up and, take direction, and maybe they find it within themselves at some point later on. I remember back in the day, just even in the military, when I was an NCO, when you have people that are depending on you to have direction given to them, to where you need to lead by example. Sometimes it's not in the actual management capacity. You're actually doing it with your peers, and a lot of times you get identified to where you had the potential to be a leader. I was kind of curious, like, how did that blossom within you? Is it something you've always wanted, or did you have a mentor perhaps that saw that in you to do it?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought mentorship too. So I have had a lot of good mentors more in the tech realm. I don't think I've really had more of a mentor in the leadership realm. So I kind of was one of those examples where it was like kind of offered to me, you kind of peak at maybe your technical level. For myself, I was actually like, do I go to imaging? So, cause I went all the way up to like doing EP, cath labs, anesthesia machines, kind of like the highest end general biomed you could do, right? Besides switching to imaging. So at one point I was like, maybe I should go to imaging, because I started doing like ultrasounds. I have a lot of ultrasound training, and that's kind of a gray area, right, in the field. Some imaging don't think it's biomed, and only some people think it's more biomed. So,
I'm sorry, it's imaging to me.
Yeah. 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 So kind of when I got, we opened some lead tech roles, and then I kind of got in the lead tech role, and it actually wasn't managerial because I didn't have direct reports. So kind of when I got into that lead tech role, I was just getting more responsibility. I think personally, honestly, I know you can never max out your skills, but I think I was starting to max out my biomed skills. So I was like, maybe I can help others and mentor others and get into a management field, or the management direction. So I was a team lead for a while, then the managerial position opened at our hospital, and I took it, to be honest. So I worked at that place for a long time, and now my peers and even some friends, I was managing them. So it actually wasn't the best experience. It was a little difficult. I even had a guy I went to college with. So I've known him for 15 years, and then he was reporting to me. And to be honest with you, I stayed in that role for about a year, and then I kind of transitioned to where I'm at now, more in the cyber role. So, I guess my point of the message is, you can try, you can take a stumble, and then, you can keep going down where path you really want in this field. The opportunities are endless.
I've heard that too, what you're describing, to where folks can get thrown into the threshold of leadership and not be ready for it or want it because, well, maybe the senior guy retired and they're not going to pay a recruiter or pay, somebody's asking for you to bring somebody out of house because it's cheaper to promote from within.
Yeah.
Because they already know the workflow, they already know the system. And again, you're not having to deal with the additional fees and asking price. Because what I tell folks is, if you move around, you have a good chance of raising your pay as you go. Some people stick to where they're at because it works for them. But for the most part, people that are flexible, willing to kind of, move up that ladder, especially if they don't have the opportunities presented to them where they're at, then rightly so. But you mentioned another thing too, is with getting promoted when you've already had the relationships with folks, longtime friends, colleagues. Like, it can either work really well or it can go really bad really quickly. The good part of that is I experienced that as well, but I got a firsthand experience of it within the military. because you start with a lot of folks that are you're promoted alongside private, specialists, and then when you get the NCO, it comes with the authority as well. But it kind of gave me a little bit of a crash course of how to navigate relationships with folks that you're used to doing the daily grind with.
Yeah.
It's different in the civilian side because you don't really have that backing of authority. You hopefully you have good relationships and you build that trust and that willingness to, you're already leading by example. But some of the suggestions that I've given folks when you're in that position is, like I said, hopefully when you're in that position, you have good relationships with folks. If you do not, then that's when you need to have conversations with people. I have really good relationships with all of my technicians. Luckily, most of them that are currently under me, I hired personally. All the people I've worked alongside, I only have the one senior tech that's been with the company longer than me, but we have that understanding. I'm kind of curious, like, what are some of the pain points, or I guess your advice to folks that are in that position to either be aware of, to avoid, words of wisdom on that? Because I don't think a lot of folks talk about that too, like the transitionary period from pure to.
Yeah. So mine was more like a lot of what I didn't like was more like, you had a certain group of guys I used to eat with for lunch. Oh, well, you can't eat with those guys now because that can be looked like favoritism. Or we used to have a core group that used to go out right after work. You can't do that. So it wasn't more like I was getting along with the techs. It was more like
the optics from the political side of in-house.
Very political. So which is fine. I guess my advice would be you're not going to be sitting at your bench repairing things. You're going to be working with people much higher above you. So you have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for the politics, and you really have to look inside yourself and see if you're willing to take that extra stress on. To be honest with you, I was happier as a tech. I was happier coming in with my scrubs on and going up to the ET lab.
I joke to some of my other friends that are either CEOs or managers as well, and I'm like, I think a lot of us that manage folks are slightly disgruntled in some kind of way just because we're not having as much fun as we used to. You look back at the days of, man, every day I got to take something apart. I got to, just kind of, it was more carefree, I guess, but obviously within the scope of that, we obviously have passion for the job as technicians, but it's different. It's a different beast when you're a manager.
Yeah, it is. And I honestly don't even, I said like a stumbling block. I don't even look at it as a setback. Now, now I pivoted, kind of getting in the cybersecurity side of HTM. So, really, I cherish all my time, there as a technician and as a manager, built a lot of skills. And I just try not to look back on it like in a, negative way. Try to keep it moving, right? That's kind of my mindset with that.
So you had also alluded to that you kind of went through the typical, ecology of when a biomed goes through their training threshold. So you progress to where you started going into different specialty modalities.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people reach out to me like, hey, I want, I've been a Biomed 1 for this many years. I'm wanting to get into imaging, anesthesia. I'm wanting to do this or that. Everybody's situation is always going to be different, but typically some of the key things I say, for instance, I've had people, how do I get into anesthesia? For you wanting to be the anesthesia guy, you have to have an understanding and probably at least some minimal time spent working on ventilators.
Yeah.
It's same kind of concept, but you also said you got into cath lab and imaging. I've touched a little bit of every specialty modality. I've done steam bulk sterilizers. I've done some, worked on the Estivas, some of the Mind Rays, the Dragers.
Yeah.
I've replaced high voltage cables on C-arms and tore down a full rad room. Like I've done a little bit of all the specialty, but I'm not a master of none of it. I'm a very much, I would attune myself as a generalist biomed. But with your experience, how would you, like for some of the biomeds out there, the younger folks listening, what are some of your suggestions where, you know, they want to go a certain route into a specialty? Maybe some of the things like you experienced or you've talked to folks about for them to make that, you know, become a reality or maybe a little easier of a transition.
Yeah. First, I think a lot of mine was luck and lining up. So, you know, it wasn't just all on me. I had some great mentors. Budgets, right? A lot of folks don't have a lot of education budgets, especially biomed. We're getting squeezed, right? The healthcare, the margins in healthcare are like 1%, 2%. I mean, hospitals aren't making money. So, right, they look at us, we're not a revenue generating department. If you're in-house, you're a cost avoidance. So, if you don't have those dollars, for me, I think you need to do like on-the-job training, shadowing. I was always going, when I first started, I was going up to the OR. I was always going with the guys. And your point to vents, yeah, vents is I think you should do vents and then anesthesia personally. I mean, I was fortunate to do it that way, but I know some people go right into anesthesia, but I think you should have that base knowledge. So I did a lot of just every call. There was a call, I went on it. I wasn't trained on the ventilators. I had a couple great older folks, older biomeds, and they, you know, they're like, grab this, grab that, you know, come along with me. I think like, for the most part, I would say biomeds are more introverted. So like, I feel like maybe sometimes like it's hard for them to like, you know, put up their hand and say, hey, I want to go on that call with you. But I encourage people to do that. You might not have the budget to go to the training. You know, some of these trainings are ridiculous. The cost.
And to be frank, you touched on a couple things there. The budgets for biomed are getting smaller and smaller and more ridiculed by the year. Yeah. We're expected to take on more work, but again, we're not a cost generating department. Whereas how are you managing your budget as a biomed department, and how can you possibly save the hospital money? So this also ties into staffing as well. Like, you know, how can you justify hiring another person when, you know, why are we going to spend more money? That's why it's so difficult to staff a lot of these hospitals too, because it's only going to cost the hospital money. So the aspect of that too is a lot of the trainings by the manufacturers are priced so to where it's not cost effective to send you to that training. They do that purposely. However, the way usually in-house programs get around this is when you are looking to go through the procurement process and you're sitting there and doing a contract review, you need to make sure that you're negotiating that the manufacturer provides the actual training to your in-house staff. That means all your service keys, all your service literature, parts accessibility, hopefully better part pricing too, and of course the training. If you go through it, the hospital purchases that equipment without consulting Biomed or at least having that aspect in there, you are literally shooting yourself in the foot for progression of training to be able to support the equipment. And of course, this is how you can also justify saving the hospital money in the long run, because usually a lot of people won't agree with this, but specialty devices, you can actually save a lot of money, and it's still safe and effective to do so utilizing a T&M approach as opposed to a full service approach the whole lifespan of the equipment. It's not necessary. And the fact that you touched on shadow your senior technicians. All you younger technicians that are out there that are so fixated on having the shiny certificate, that crisp piece of paper that you get from the manufacturer, I will tell you, you will get hired just being able, because we're biomeds. We're asking you questions about the specialty. If you're, I'm getting worked up because I'm like, if you can showcase that you know what you're talking about, like we've interviewed imaging technicians. You got the certificate, great, means you went through the official training. but we're also going to talk tech talk with you and go through, hey, if this situation happens, what would you do?
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of technicians that went through official OEM training and they fumbled those questions. Whereas I know folks that have never been to an official manufacturer level training on a specialty device, and they could walk circles around other folks that went to that training. Because you also have to realize, people, that there is the training for the OEM's technicians that they go through, and then there's the training that they put aside to the folks that are paying to come in and do that training. I will tell you, a lot of people that work for OEMs have alluded that that training is not the same. It's just enough to meet contractual or purchasing obligations for what you're paying for. So I threw a lot. I know I just mentioned a whole lot in that like couple minute span, but I don't know, where are you at with it?
Yeah. So I've been fortunate to go a lot of training, did a lot of Draeger training, a lot of Phillips. Phillips is right in our backyard in Cleveland. They have an awesome training center. I definitely know some of the training's better than others. Some of the training, like you have said, you only get this level of training. Their field engineers get this level of training, and then they put the keys in there and access. So it could be a challenge. My training with anesthesia, Draeger, Benson, and anesthesia machines was fantastic. But I even did PM. We would even do PMs, together with the tech before we went to the school. So kind of more of that shadowing. And I think that really set me up for success as well, actually going in with that base knowledge. But yeah, I even see that with, you're talking about shiny papers. I even see that with degrees, to be honest with you. Just because you have that certification, or just because you have CBET, CHTM. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of all those, I'm a huge fan of Amy. I have CBET, CHTM certification, but just because you have that doesn't mean you've arrived, right? So there's a lot of paths to go down with that. But the OEMs with their training, I think it's all over the place. And I agree with you, back to the acquisition.
Some do it better than others, for sure.
Yeah, you talking about acquisition. So I was always in a pretty strong in-house biomed team, and we sat on capital equipment planning committee. So we would get to it before we acquired the device. So we could, like you said, add in some service schools sometimes and get involved like that. But I know a lot of times, talking to different folks in the industry, a lot of times these devices show up. If you don't have a strong biomed, a program or a presence, seat at the table, you might just be getting this equipment, might just be showing up. So I think there's a lot to just even clinical engineering, biomed, HTM, whatever you want to, whatever flavor you want to call it. I think the more, just even like your show, everything everyone's doing, the more representation we can get. I know we kind of came out, like a lot of the departments came out of facilities. We always reported up through IT. I think that kind of gave us a higher leg up, at the hospital. And then with everything being integrated, I think that might make more sense, like IT or operations. But my dream would be eventually to not be seen as just the wrench turners, right? Obviously we need that, but I think we need to kind of, step our game up and have those seats at the table and.
I mean, that's true. Cause if you think about, I mean, I've been guilty of this as well. When we're talking to folks about what a BMed is, what a biomed does, the first thing we talk about is, we're the ones responsible for checking, inspecting, and repairing your equipment, which is all tied to wrench turning. But it's also the first way to get them to appreciate what we do, because inherently that is the base foundation of what biomed's responsibilities are. But as you allude to, the biomed ecosystem has continuously had a renaissance over the years, over the decades. We're expected to take on so many more tasks and so many more scopes of responsibility. We're coordinating with IT and cybersecurity because more and more equipment is hooking up to networks, hooking up through Bluetooth, sending patient data through the network via the actual medical device now. The concern of cyberware ransomware attacks. So just recently, there was a story that came out from there are a couple sources, but essentially there's a patient monitor that is coming in from China, and it's being sold on Amazon and eBay. It's very affordable. I've seen it there. I had a spreadsheet of about probably 25, 30 clients just in the DFW area that have bought this. Small doctors' practices, GI practices, surgery centers, ERs, even some banner hospitals.
Yeah.
The contact monitor.
Yeah.
And folks, what was found is there was a back door in there to where if you have it hooked up to your systems, it's just downloading all of that data without you even knowing it. And again, this is something as simple as one patient monitor. So think about it. It's that one patient monitor, a simple little $500-$600 monitor, is getting full brain into every little bit of patient data that all of your other devices are coming to. So that's just one aspect, and it's such a huge aspect. It's the flavor of the month. It's the most important conversation that currently biomeds are having within the industry is network security, that kind of jazz.
Yeah, buzzword.
But then you also, every webinar I see is nothing but cybersecurity, and rightly so. It's important.
Or
but
AI.
We also wear other hats as well. There's the AI is the actually the hot word right now.
Yeah.
And then we have procurement and capital management planning and project management. Then we have regulatory compliance, navigating the relationships and the surveys through Joint Commission, DMV, CIHQ, CLIA, COLA, like all of them. And then that's not even accounting for in-service trainings that we're having with our staff. I know I'm leaving a lot out, but what I'm trying to allude to is, like you were saying, there is constant more and more being put on us.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate the aspect of we need to, yes, let people know what the core Biomed mission is. But if we're really going to let them know what our value is, we got to let them know all the hats we wear.
Yeah. And I think, and, I can appreciate, I'm not just talking from, never being a tech. I appreciate all the hands-on work. Believe me, sometimes I wish I could just grab a wrench and, rip something apart. But we really have to worry about the total life cycle management equipment. People can look at that continuum, like you were alluding to, all the way from acquiring to decommissioning, right? Even when we're getting rid of that device, right? We gotta make sure that PHI is off there. We have to make sure we're safeguarding everything that was on that device before we just throw it in the dumpster.
Most of the time you're collaborating with the folks that handle the books to even see if you can either point them towards a company that they could donate it to for tax write-offs, or for them to sell it to a particular entity to make some money back on it at the very end of it. So we're even in that part of the process.
Yeah, we're really, and then on the clinical side, I want to touch a little bit on the clinical side. I think that's where I gained a lot of my knowledge. I love clinicians, nurses, doctors. My wife's a nurse. Right. We're there to serve them. I mean, that's how I kind of look at it, right? Part of it, right? Obviously patient safety, but we're letting them, be able to have their equipment they need, right? I think we need to get more up to the clinical language that they use and actually how a medical device is used. I think that will help a lot in your troubleshooting. When I started learning about ventilators, if the respiratory therapist, she or he wasn't busy, like I would ask them stuff. What's PEEP? What's tidal volume? What are all these things? Like, I think that's a huge part, and kind of going back to like more of that introverted biomed type, like I'm generalizing, but get out there, talk to your nurses, talk to your doctors. I know surgeons can be scary, but I love surgeons. I used to go into OR, live calls, anesthesia calls. There's a anesthesia machine. You can actually change the flow sensors while they're bagging the patient. Like, to me, that's awesome, but you need to have some of that clinical knowledge and clinical language, and it will help you immensely in your career. And also, if you don't know it, you don't have to know it all. Go read about it, look it up. Google PEEP. What's PEEP? Why is it? Why do they use it? What's going on here? How is the mechanism of this device, either sustaining life for a patient or what's it doing to the patient? You get a lot farther with your customers too. Like, if you come up and say, nurses always say like generic things like Travenol, like a Travenol IV pump. That pump hasn't been around for 30 years and they'll still call it that. You use correct terminology. You use kind of their clinical lingo as much as you
That's
can.
half the battle. You touched on something like, yeah, we're there for patient safety, but who are we building the relationships with? The clinicians.
Yeah.
The people that are putting in the service requests, the people that are asking us to maintain their equipment so they can do their job. And you're so right. Like the medical terminology, you know how like you, when we first started the episode, like BMed, clinical engineer, Biomed, HTM, like we have so many freaking monikers for our field. And the same thing happens with terminology in hospitals. You can have one nurse that'll call something one thing, and you'll have another nurse call the exact same thing something else. So depending on whatever, hospital facility you're in or client you're with, I've heard so many different designators for one type of equipment. I got an invite to help, basically Amy sends out an invite to folks like, hey, could you review what things should be tested on for the CBET, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I'm like, we need to make medical terminology higher than what it actually is and probably bring down electrical theory a little bit lower. Because so electrical theory is important. I will never say that it should be completely done away with. You have to have a base concept of, resistance and voltage and current and all that, But how much in the weeds are we really getting into understanding, some of the component level troubleshooting nowadays? It's not. And there's so many times that clinicians will ask a question of one of my techs and they don't know what they're asking them because they don't understand what they're asking them. Really being able to understand the anatomy and physiology, the medical terminology, and how equipment's supposed to work is what a biomed needs to be successful. And obviously they got to be motivated and willing to do the work and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But from a schematic of success of training, we do need to put more emphasis on the terminology aspect so we can talk with our clinicians. Because if you understand exactly what they're telling you, or you can ask them a question in their language, more than likely you're going to either be able to solve the answer before you even go out there, or at the very least have a pinpoint designator of what you need to look at and what their problem is. And most of the time, coincidentally enough, it's either user error, setting issue, accessory issue before it's actually a damage to the equipment.
Yeah, devices are more and more reliable and more, like you're saying, a lot of times it's a user error, which we have to be careful how we tell them it's user error.
They're so sensitive about it. Hey, for folks that are wondering how to navigate that space, the thing that has been successful for me is if I tell them it's user error, and obviously anybody you tell them, they're going to get slightly offended. I follow up with this. I say, I can't expect you to know how to handle every setting of every medical device that you have. That's my job to help you navigate that. You already have to know how to navigate everything within a patient. Let me handle the medical device. It's all right. Let them know that hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not targeting you. This is the fact of the matter. And usually that kind of is like, oh, okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, that's great advice, especially you going to different sites. So in-house, I was going to bring up earning some grace, having rapport with people. You're not always going to fix everything right there, but know the nurse by name, know who you're talking to. Don't, speak to them, go up there and talk to them with confidence, especially in some of those areas like the OR. I feel like they're always like sharks, that kind of smell blood in the water a little bit if you go in there and, you're staring at the ground. And so, kind of build your network with everyone. And sometimes when you're, not the hero of the day, you're going to get a lot of grace from people. I find that, I heard you mention the Amy thing for the CBET. Did you got that survey recently?
Yeah, I already did it.
Yeah, so I actually participated in that. I actually went to Amy headquarters. It was in December.
I saw you were part of that team.
Yeah, we had like a committee, so glad to see that out there. But yeah, kind of what you were talking about, definitely some of the outline needs to be changed. So that thing, lesson process.
And I just appreciate they're willing to revisit and move with the times. The fact that they brought you and several other, people that do the job on a daily to know, like, hey, it's not just people that were used to a certain way of things when they were doing the job. They brought in folks that are doing the job. And we have
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
Amy's pretty good about that, at least to where they rehash some of their data to make sure that's accurate. Usually, about every 3 to 5 years or something like that.
yeah. I'm a huge fan of Amy. I think everyone should be a member. You can have a basic membership for $99 a year. Um, you know, they have some really great people. I know, Danielle McGarry. She was the person that suggested myself to go down to that job task force committee. I think they called it. I can't remember exactly what they called it, but
It's a very
yeah,
official.
yeah, yeah,
Basically,
job
they,
task
they make
analysis.
job.
I think. Yeah, yeah,
It's called the Justice League.
yeah. So I think they might do it every 5 years. Don't quote me on that. So every 5 years they refresh the certification. While we're talking about certifications, I know people have talked about, the industry talked about, I think we should have to be certified. I don't know how you feel about that. This,
Ooh,
I
he's
think it
drawing
should
a line,
almost,
folks.
yeah, I almost think it should be like,
So here's
almost
where I would
like an RN license.
a lot of, and again, this isn't me targeting any particular section of the biomed field, but most of the time when I hear this argument, it's folks that have been in the field already 15, 20 plus years or more saying, why do I need to get certified? I've been doing this. Okay, there can be a grandfathering or whatever, but what you're alluding to is when you put us on other technical professions, a lot of those folks go through a journeyman system. They go through having to be certified within your particular state because every particular state also has their own regulatory compliance actions. What might be asked in Wisconsin compared to Texas is going to be different. Texas has some of the most like rigorous imaging, just specifically on that front, regulatory compliance needs than most other states. So if you're going to be certified in something, like you alluded to with the RN as well, we're professionals already. I can see at some point the field moving to some kind of system like that. But we also need to get to the point to where, one, we have enough technicians coming into the field to where, it makes it not that certification's not affordable, but how accessible is it to everyone in the beginning? I am very much so that I champion getting the CBET, getting the CHTM, because what they mean and what they mean towards the profession. But we also need to ask ourselves, how can we take what we currently have and make it to where everybody wants to go after it? What is the incentivization of getting a certification outside of being recognized as alphabet warrior, as some people call us? Because I'm a part of that ecosystem now too. I have 2 certifications. I have degrees because I'm always going to champion education and always making yourself, go after learning something new on the regular. As biomeds, that is entrenched in what's expected of us. But the problem is we have a line in the sand between really 2 sections of the field. We have the ones that say certification in general is stupid because some folks that are certified don't know diddly squat and aren't really good biomeds, which more than likely they're pulling from personal bias and relationships or experiences they've had. Being a CBET, I'm not saying you're a subject matter expert in everything biomed, but it's you taking a test on every. I also would question too, how many people that are saying that have actually taken the CBET?
Yeah, that's a good.
That would be part of the question, because when I've taken the test, and like I said, I've been doing this like yourself almost 15 years, it's a hard test. Now, again, it doesn't make you a troubleshooting guru. It doesn't make you the greatest technician ever having the CBET, but it's still, it tests your knowledge of every aspect within the hospital, different modalities, what they're supposed to do, network and troubleshooting. Like it gets into all of that. I think it's worthwhile. But you certainly raise a question or, an ideology of what if we were all certified? What if, it wasn't just chalked up to possibly getting a $1 to $2 pay raise or just being a promotion criteria? What if it was a standard of what from you being a BMET and then there is CBET?
Yeah, like I was thinking, I don't know, there's so many different opinions on this, but what if it
It's
even
very
just
controversial, isn't it?
yeah, what if it just I'm always thinking about like how to elevate the field, because right, we can talk about pay, right, 24/7 puts the salary survey out every year. Like, what if somehow
It's
if we
out now,
can,
folks.
yeah, it's out. What if we can like get to that next rung, be more like our IT. Let's face it, the IT professionals are making more
They're
money.
making bank. They're making
Yeah.
hella bank.
So I don't know. Not saying national certification would solve that. And like you said, yeah, it probably actually will never happen, to be honest with you. But sometimes like just thinking in my head, I'm like, I think that's good, but obviously I already have my CBET, so I can easily say, oh yeah, that's a great idea, And like you said, that I actually the guy I start with 36 years in the field, he doesn't have a CBET. I take him over most biomeds I know. So it's
I got, like I said, I got all the credentials, but there's techs out there that'll, make me look like a joke just because they're just that better of, troubleshooting stuff. But I mean, I can troubleshoot against anybody as well. There's just some
yeah.
people that are just always going to be like a level above you. There's always somebody better out there.
Oh yeah,
And that's okay.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And you don't, also, I lost my train of thought actually.
Oh, it's the argument, like you're saying, of I think people are alluding CBET to from being a certified technician to being the best technician.
Yeah.
The argument is like, I know people that have CBET that aren't that great of technicians. Well,
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of bias, like you were
compared to who?
Yeah. I don't know. That's
I'm
a
sure
tough
there are
one.
nurses out there that are certified that
Oh
aren't
yeah.
that great.
Yeah. You
But
have
you
the
know
whole,
what? It also lends them a professional credibility for them to do so much more with their career, and is widely recognized within healthcare systems.
yeah, kind of like that
That's
joke.
why.
I would say kind of like that joke. Who was the worst class, in their class for the doctors? Who was the bottom of their class? They're still a doctor, right? So
Exactly, they all pass.
you have all different levels.
It feels like that too when you pass the CBET. Like when you barely passed, you're like, "Oh well, I passed it. I barely passed,
Yeah.
but I passed it."
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I think it actually shows, like, just go into that, putting the hiring hat on. I think it just shows initiative, right? And I know there's barriers, like you said, it is getting pretty pricey to take the exam. I will admit that, but it shows buy-in. It shows initiative, just straight initiative. Like you didn't have to choose to get certified, but you went ahead and did it. And to me, that's a check mark for me.
It shows that you're looking towards your career. You're wanting personal growth. You want to show that you're constantly getting better. And usually when hire your manager, you want to see somebody that takes initiative for their career, that isn't just settling for just doing 9 to 5. They don't want to take on extra work. They want to do what's expected of them, go home, don't talk to them, which there are techs like that. But why can't we expect better for ourselves and for our colleagues?
Yeah.
You said something that made me remember. So I'm in the Biomed Discord, and there is a Biomed that said, "What was I looks like I need 3 certifications to apply to a Biomed 3 within the company I work for." It is a dialysis company. I want to pursue CHWS, CBET, CHTM. I've been in this career field for 10 plus years and want to step into lead management roles. So that is an example. I told him, to me, that sounds like they're using the certifications as a stopgap to promote people. Because
gatekeeper.
For a Tech 3 to have to be required, especially in a dialysis company, that means you're only working on one device, one type of device. I was Tech 3 as a general biomed, no certifications, which is pretty much that's the case in the biomed field in general for the most part. Like, it shouldn't be a stopgap for you to be able to get promotion. Now, like if you're talking about, I could maybe see a company, like if you want to be what we call as a specialist or a biomed for, everybody has different designators for it.
Yeah.
But let's say you wanted to make, for you to be officially a imaging specialist technician, you have to have the CRES. I could maybe understand that, which again, I'm 50-50 with that on. It's going to be what you decide to do with your company. But to ask somebody that wants to be a Tech 3, which is just, to me, it's a senior tech that you don't have to micromanage. They're self-sufficient. They can handle their own schedules. They're essentially, they're lead tech light. They're just not managing direct reports.
Yeah.
Or getting moved into that management spot. That turns my stomach when I hear stuff like that, to where a certification is being used to, discourage folks. Because let's be honest, each certification's like $500 to take. And then you have to pass it. I've taken the CBET more than once. I've taken the CHTM more than once. It gets expensive really quick. And then you also have to maintain the certifications. Plus, they're expecting you to make this investment towards a Biomed 3 promotion when likely you're not going to get that much of a raise from a Tech 2 to Tech 3. Might be okay, $2, $3, few dollars, something like that. But we need to, I think, from just to circle it all around, to get back to what you're talking about, we need to take the conversation from making a certification, your CBET, your CHTM, your CRES, as a tool for a slight pay raise or promotion, and turn it into, or to where it is recognized as something bigger than itself. We're utilizing it as a tool for flight mobility and what we're trying to pursue, but it can be, like you alluded to, we could have something truly special to where we have something in place. I mean, we already have the infrastructure to do it, but when you talk to a clinician and RN and you talk about the folks that have all the certifications on top of that, like, they recognize within their own community how big a deal that is. And we honestly, the folks that don't have it either don't care about it or they use it as a negative connotation against folks that do. So I guess my question to the field is, what do you think we need to do to make this a relevant thing to where everybody recognizes it, to where we want to uplift one another, that are pursuing it?
Yeah, it's going to have to be, if it ever came to fruition, it would definitely be a grassroots movement, I believe. Have you seen, I've heard some different things that all the associations, the state associations are trying to group together. And I believe it has something to do with Amy as well. Don't quote me, I don't have all the details, but our association is actually tomorrow. I'm going down to Columbus in Ohio. And I know our president, Ryan Gonzalez, is doing some work with Amy. And I think they might be trying to bridge all the associations, or you'd have to look it up.
Yes.
I don't know. Have you seen any of that, Chace?
So I was on their last webinar together.
Oh, great.
They're going to be doing a lot of them. Because I'm also on the HTMA North Texas board. Okay. And shout out to Ryan. Ryan's a good guy.
Yeah, he's great.
By the time this airs, I know y'all have the conference, but I wish I could go to it. I have an ISO audit I got to be a part of for our radio certification, so I can't make it. Because I've always wanted to go to the Ohio one. Y'all have great training and do so much, really. Like, the Ohio biomed community is like legit. Like, y'all have like a tight knit group. But to get back to what you're talking about is, it was recognized that we have all these separate biomed associations, but
Yeah.
none of them have really collaborated or worked together or shared information together. And they're like, why we have all these different entities that can easily piecemeal knowledge sharing, help you build out organizations in an area if you don't have a biomed society in your area, because some states don't, and you're usually having to travel to other ones. Like, they're pulling resources together so that we can start linking an actual network of biomed outside of what we're doing already. And then obviously offering training and stuff too, to where people can share that information as well. Unfortunately, there are some spots in the United States where there isn't a tight-knit biomed community. So hopefully this was the start of kind of building that.
I was going to say, so I actually technically in my role now, I actually dotted line report to Ryan. So yeah, it's
is Ryan just everybody's boss in Ohio? Because everybody I talk to, it just seems like that's the case.
No, he's on the cybersecurity side, and he does have that national purview. But yeah, I dotted line to him, and he's a great resource for the community. We have a great show coming up. Like you said, this will air after, but we have Top Golf. We have a leadership summit that I'm going to tomorrow at 1:00. I'm actually bringing some biomeds with me. That's one thing I noticed, like going back to biomeds, maybe being more introverted. Like when I go to these conferences, I've been to Amy was in Cleveland in 2019. I went there. I've gone to MD Expo. You'll see a lot of like supervisors and above. I don't know if you've noticed that. I feel like it's hard to get that BMET 1 through 3 there to even care, to be engaged. So I know that's kind of some things
there,
you
I think there's a hunger for it from the younger technician base, but part of our responsibility of us that have been in the field a little bit is to let them know how important it is to go to these events, to go to your Biomed Association meetings, to go to the conferences that are being held on. I also think we need to hold a foot to the fire of our healthcare facilities, especially our in-house teams. Like, for instance, a good friend of mine, Andrea Brainerd, she is over Children's Health in Dallas. They fund some of their technicians to go to AMI conferences and other stuff each year.
That's great.
Because they recognize the importance, because obviously it helps maintain their certifications. There is an inherent reward for organizations that have a lot of technicians that are certified. That base of their technicians that are certified as almost like a marketing to an aspect.
Yeah.
Because you can say, we have this level of doctor staff, nurse staff, biomeds that are certified, and even your Trimedics, your Sodexas, your Crothels, all that jazz. The more certified technicians, they utilize that in those discussions for business and for patient care. Like it's a selling point. You being certified is a selling point to your hiring organization. I would like to see more younger folks at the AMI conferences, your MD Expos, your Biomed associations. There's always a factor of cost. There's ways around that, but I think what I would challenge the Biomed associations with is, what if there's a way for you to set aside a nest egg of each of because every Biomed association has a war chest, as we call it. It's funds that you're gaining from your sponsors, from your people that are coming out and providing content support, your get-togethers, either training or networking. Put a little bit of a nest egg to the side. That way we can sponsor folks to go out and experience your AMI conferences, your MDX with stuff like that. Because we can hope and pray that our hospital systems will allow their biomed staff to go. Nothing's getting cheaper. Besides, you also have to factor in flight, hotel, food, gas, all that stuff you're getting a rental car too.
It's expensive.
So we need to think outside the box on how can we get greater attendance from our younger biomed generation, and so that they can experience what obviously you and myself have experienced, the networking aspect. Obviously something like what the Ohio conference is about to put on. I saw the list of all the training you guys are going to have too. This is obviously an opportunity too for a lot of the younger generation to go out and get new information on that can possibly help elevate their career too. We just got to sell it.
Yeah, definitely it's on us. I see it both ways. It's definitely on us, especially a little more but also that, and sometimes that's lacking and that can be frustrating. But for me, I see H10, other people see it as a job, which is fine, right? You want to see it as a job, that's fine. But however we can make it this career, get young people on board. I don't have all the ideas, but I know people like the books, your book, I have Jenny's book, all the books, podcasts, especially for younger folks. I know, might not be as hip as the younger folks. I know these podcasts and all your whole social media.
It's helping me
that
seem
train
younger
going.
than I am.
Yeah. Keep that train going. I think we can get people engaged, especially the younger generation.
So I know before I brought you on, you're like, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, we're going to talk shop, man. Don't worry about it. And look, we're already so far into the conversation. Before we jump off here today, what, through just everything you've been through in your 15 years and maybe 15 to 20 to 25 years more going forward, because you're still a young man, but through all of your experiences, what is some suggestions or advice you could give to, our up and comers, our people that are entering the field, the people maybe had a couple years in?
Yeah. So look in yourself, your inner self, take that initiative. As we were speaking, go out and start shadowing these techs. Do some self-study, right? There's so much information online now. Even some, certain get online that, might only be if you went to training, but they're available, right? We know how to get some certain things. Dig into all the information that's at your fingertips and just, keep trying to level up if that's what you want. That's what I want for myself and my career. But if you want it, like, you can achieve it. I think it's endless. And I think this field is going more into, we're talking kind of like cyber. I mean, you can start getting your IT certifications or getting into the IT side of the house.
S plus, A plus.
Yeah. So I want to do Security Plus. Actually, I think I technically need to, for my role eventually. So keep trying to better yourself and use all these, use your podcasts and LinkedIn. I forgot his name. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's got that Kaleidoscope Biomedical book. I just bought him. He's from from UAE or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure his name. Hamishada or something like that. I'm sorry, I probably butchered it. But him. You see him on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I just bought his book.
Who you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I never met him besides on LinkedIn, but I bought his book. Some of those books are pricey. I bought some cybersecurity books that were pricey, and I'm putting myself out there. I even mentioned to you, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I'm bringing my medical device knowledge, expertise, and then I do have a lot of interaction with IT, but I'm using all that from 15 years. I'm kind of melding that all together and using that to my advantage to, move.
I tell techs all the time, you don't have to know everything. Nobody will know everything. You just have to be open to learning and constantly consume information. And then we're biomeds. We'll get it. You'll learn it.
Yeah. Tenacity. Keep at it. Right. Just like saying every time, you're not going to be the hero every day, sometimes you can maybe get a little your pride hurt too, but you keep at it. We're dealing, we always say that our life sustaining devices. So, you got to take it serious and you got to be all in too,
So I'm glad we finally got you on, man. It's there's a bucket list of just certain folks that like I'm hoping to eventually talk to. You've been on that list. I'm glad we got you here. For the folks that maybe want to reach out to you, I know you got a LinkedIn or what have you. Where can people find you at if they want to have a conversation or ask your advice or what have you?
Yeah. So
Or
yeah, I have
people. I don't want to help nobody.
yeah, no, I have a LinkedIn. Yeah, that's probably the best way. I'm sure when we promote this episode, we'll put my LinkedIn tag there.
Yeah.
I'm always, not always on LinkedIn. I got little kids, but I try to stay engaged in the community, and I think it's important. So if anyone wants to hit me up on LinkedIn, I'm there.
So as always, I appreciate everybody that tunes in, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, follow. Let people that may not know about the show, let your colleagues know. Any level of support's always appreciated. To stay up to date on everything that's going on with Bearded Biomed, there is a newly revised Bearded Biomed website. It's just www.beardedbiomed.com. Got some blogs on there, got some information on there for you. Stay tuned. There will be more really cool stuff coming out in the near future. That's all I'll allude to for now. But as always, we appreciate your support. Hope you have a great day. And Kevin, thank you again for being on, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, folks. May the beard be with you. We'll catch you next time on the next episode. Take care.
Biomed.